I understand I'm meant to talk for a quarter of an hour, 18 minutes or so, and then all you students have got plenty of questions to throw at me. Now, I hope that you haven't got the short straw and had to come to this to hear about some old fart talk about forestry and things like that. But let me tell you, forestry is a pretty exciting industry to be in. Despite the perceptions out there, I mean, most of you, in fact, probably all of you live in Gisborne, you know only too well that forestry is a big industry. The perception of many people is it's just blokes and ladies swinging chainsaws around in the bush, cutting down trees and things, but actually it's a lot more than that. And just by way of setting the scene, I've just thrown up a few figures here. I'm not going to bore you with too many figures, but nationally you can see that we've got 1.7 million hectares of pine forest. If a rugby field's roughly a hectare, we've got a lot of rugby fields out there in forest. And you can look at those numbers for yourself. You can see that it contributes a lot to our economy. And if we bring it a bit closer to home, to Gisborne where you are, we're knocking on a bit under 10% of that. So we've got about 160,000 hectares of planted forest. And right now we're producing 2 million cube, which is a huge volume, and a lot of that you'll see out the wharf and out the port, a lot of it going through the mill at J&L. A key point to note, as you'll see a bit further down, is it's going to increase dramatically. 2020, we've forecast that it'll hit 3.4 million. 2020 is not that far away, only 7 years, and it's going to increase significantly. Right. ICT, technology, computers, all that sort of thing. Where does it fit in our industry? Well, as I've got listed here, it is right across the entire value chain. So for those folk that are out there researching, they then take their developments and their findings, that goes through to the nurseries through to the forest, and so on and so on. It goes all the way through. Now, what I'm going to do is just briefly touch on each of those and just give you a little bit of a snapshot, a little bit of a smorgasbord of the things that we can see where ICT technology does touch and impact our industry. If we start off with education, when your teachers were at school, the world was in black and white. It was pretty much like you see here, fairly staid, not a lot of excitement. You had to be very, very strict in what you did. You come forward to today, I'm sure you see in your guys' world, the impact that technology has is huge. I've got 2 boys that go to Campion. They're now required to have laptops. Laptops in my day wasn't heard of. You come forward to now, particularly in terms of forestry education, you see the impact of technology is huge. What we've got here on the right-hand side is a simulator of several hundreds of thousands of dollars worth that teaches students that wish to get into harvesting practices in the bush how to use it to the best advantage before they get out and practice on the real machine, which of course is $1.5 million or thereabouts. So the education is very much different. You can see the impact of technology and how it is improving the world. Rather than just learning it out of textbooks and picture books, you're actually getting to use it. On the left-hand side, you can see there students out in the field with a lot of handheld tools which we now use very much on a day-to-day basis. That funny looking backpack with a mushroom on. Anybody have any idea what that might be? There's a few heads nodding. That's actually a GPS unit. Many of you would have seen little handheld GPS units that you might use when you go hunting, tramping out in the boat and things. That's a very highly accurate one that can get down to sub-metre level. Used a lot in forestry for boundary purposes, surveying, those kinds of things. Another key component within the industry where technology is having a huge impact is in this field. in distribution. You know, any given week, there'll be hundreds of truck movements in and out of that port. If any of you have been in taxis of recent times, you know, taxis have those little wee boxes there that tell the taxi driver where to head, where to pick up their next customer. That technology has come through into forestry, but at a far greater level. Every single truck that you see out there in this day and age, or at least the vast majority, have fully kitted out GPS units that enable everybody from head office, the port office, the dispatch office, know exactly where each and every truck is, where it's heading, which logging crew within which forest it's going to, and then it goes even further, that it enables them to see by way of these maps. Down at the dispatch office at the port, they've got some wonderful screens there that they can see exactly where a truck is located on the east coast. And the system that we've got here covers from Napier right up to the east coast. Now, a lot of that is all through the use of satellite technology, high-speed, whiz-bang things that I don't pretend to understand, but it's simplified to the level that a truck driver, a dispatch operator, the person that sends them out, can easily understand. So these, sorry, I'll just move off. These boxes here, the touch worked. I will use my back button. There you go. This never fails, never fails. Those are the tools that the truck drivers actually have in their cab. So they know exactly where they are to go and what they are to pick up. Now, you all had a sneak preview at the next screen. The busy looking box on the left, that's a bit like the shopping schedule for the dispatch operator to look at, and he can through that say, all right, truck number 16, I'd like you to go to XYZ Forest up Martar Road, and you are going to go and see the Russell Holland logging crew, and you are going to pick up 2 packets of this load. And that is then followed all the way through the system right down to the port. So the port knows exactly what has come in on that truck from the Russell Holland logging crew, and it then goes all the way through the process of being prepared for the log ships or the mill out at Duke and Nisho. The next step in the chain is assessing what has come in. So we've just had, through all the use of that flash technology, which is wireless and updating the databases automatically, down to the port. What we have here are a couple of guys who are doing what's called scaling or measuring of the logs. Each and every log that you see sitting down at that port has got its own unique number. Each one has a barcode. And what these blokes are doing here is putting on the barcode, scanning the barcode, measuring the diameter on the back, and as quick as that, it's automatically in the database. So at any one given time, ourselves as Ernslaw, who are sticking a lot of logs out at the port, the trucking operator who is carting the logs and gets paid for how much he gets carted, the port who has to handle them and load up the ships, knows exactly that there are 17,342 of that type of log, 6,714 of that type of log. So if you're wanting to talk about an inventory system or a stock take system, this is pretty flash. And at any time in my office in the old post office building, I can just use the flash technology that's now available and download a report to see how much has gone onto a given ship or how much is left behind and those sorts of things. This is where I'm probably more involved. Forestry is a bit like that when I started in the resource planning and management side. Pretty much what we're looking at here is knowing what we've got out in the bush. how much are we growing? How much area do we have? What is the land types like? In this era, before satellites, active aeroplanes, little unmanned flying aircraft and all those sorts of things, the forest ranger would have to go out and spend considerable time hand drawing maps using old survey techniques to try and describe what it is we have, where it is, and then come back to the office and write a report. And of course, all of that takes time. But move forward to the modern day, and we've got all sorts of tools that we can use to make that job easier. And I'll just go through and quickly touch on some of those. I mean, again, up here you can see the gentleman with that GPS unit, very accurate. On the top right, we've got somebody out there with a field computer. We've got an aeroplane there which is scanning the landscape with a process known as LiDAR. Down here, a lot of our roads are now graded with the use of GPS and laser technology, and that's relaying information back to the base, to the operator, to know exactly where that blade on that machine should or shouldn't be. Who's heard of GIS? Is that something you do at school? Mapping software? Do you get exposed to that at all? Well, if any of you have got any sort of interest in town planning, resource management, environmental sciences or something, this is a product that you should certainly get exposure to, because it's really become, in recent years, the cornerstone of so much of our data sets, our information storage, which can then be presented in many ways, sort of in a nice looking map, is text type files, all manner of sorts of things. The sorts of things that feed into that product, this suite of things around here, any sort of information that you can assign to a spatial or a geographic type of format can go into here. So we tap into a lot of things, whether it be aerial photos, satellite images, maps, a lot of mobile data. You know, I now have cell phones with all that whiz-bang technology on that I can wander around the bush and then download into our mapping software. I touched on LiDAR. LiDAR has been around for a few years, but for us in forestry, it's in its relative infancy. What we do there is that we engage an outfit out of Napier that will fly over our forestry estate, and what they do is they bombard the ground with these laser pulses. You can sort of see that blue thing coming out the base of the plane. Well, really it's just a whole heap of gazillions of these pulses about the size of a dinner plate. And what they do is that they bounce down. Part of that dinner plate pulse might hit the top of a tree, and that little piece will bounce back up to the plane. Another piece might go further down to the ground and then bounce back. And it's all technology and science. It's way beyond my simple forestry head. But the products that come out of it is absolutely incredible. Here are just a few images. Now, they look like some nice flash artwork, but that is just what has been generated from some of these pulses or these dots that can then be used to analyse, as we have in the middle, almost a 3D tree, a group of trees out to the right, and the number of applications are almost limitless, really. What we can see here is the ability to count trees. The industry's not quite there yet, but if we had the ability to count our trees, my world would be a whole lot easier. Many of you will be more than aware, if you go up the coast, of the issues we have of erosion. You know, you see all that crap land up there fall down, flow out the rivers and silt up and all that kind of things, the big slips that we have. Because of that, we have difficulty in counting our trees. We can go out and plot and count and all sorts of things, but we're not quite right on the money. If we could push this technology to say that, yep, in this given forest we're about to harvest, we have 12,432,000, that would be far better than saying we've got 15 million or so, and then find we're way short, or we've got to lay off a crew because we didn't cater for it correctly. This is the sort of product that I'll get out of that bucket of dots of a LiDAR image. Now, to most of you, that looks just like, I don't know, a black and white photograph or something of some fairly denuded landscape. You can see here the big ridge line, you can see a road at the top, and that's actually somewhere up between Mata and the Hungia Road, for those of you that know the country up there. This is the sort of image that we get. But with that, we also get the canopy layer, or the vegetation layer. I mentioned before that that pulse comes down out of the sky, part of it will hit the vegetation, part of it will continue on down and hit the ground. We then can go and separate the two, so we can say, just show me the ground. You get this image here. So for us, we can see exactly where we should probably put our roadways to harvest the forests. We can see exactly where some of that real erosion-prone, slumpy, sort of ugly land is that we should perhaps avoid. We then come to the draping over the vegetation on top, and we can see, there we are, exactly where the trees are, where the trees aren't. And so it's becoming an increasingly valuable tool for us. Here's another example. Big ugly scar there right in the middle. How else can we use it? Well, because of the ability of those pulses to bounce off the tops of the trees and head up, when we get in and analyse it a bit more, we can exactly see where within the forest are the parts that are growing trees very well and where the trees are growing very poorly. So if we look at that here, we can see that those redder ones are where the trees are just bolting away, and we'll have the bigger volume, probably the bigger, fatter trees, and then through to the blue areas where it's pretty poor. There's something going on there. It might be that they're at high altitude, it might be that they're in a particularly dry spot or whatever. So the use of this tool and this technology can help us to plan where we're going to do things in the future. Where should we invest money? Where should we hold back money? Very useful. Another neat thing that we're using quite a bit of now, satellite technology. If you look carefully, you can actually see the North Island of New Zealand, and they're under the clouds, and I think East Cape's just off the bit of that satellite piece there. The wonderful thing with the internet is I can jump on my laptop at work, I can say, all right, I want to get some imagery of this part of the East Coast. I just dial it in, put in my credit card number, and next time a particular satellite, are you yawning, Courtney? Oh, terrible. The next time the satellite is flying over, it'll just take the photos or that strip of imagery that I've asked for and email it to me, and I tell you, that's pretty impressive stuff. Those images are then taken and given to those mapping staff, and they are able to put it into those systems that I showed you just a little bit earlier to determine areas where we might have perhaps a forest health problem, or where we have just harvested, or any number of things. Now, for those of you that may know a little bit about satellites, there's a wide range of them up there. Some can be very detailed to just about see the possum that's been squashed on the road, through to some that have special abilities like hyperspectral images, which really deals with sort of moisture contents and things in vegetation. So depending on what we want to use it for, we can dial up any particular satellite. Where to in the future? Well, with a combination of all of those things that we were describing before, we could be in the position where we can actually model and create on our computers at work a very real 3D image of any particular part of a forest at any given time, count the trees, and be able to find the number of logs, the products, the quality, and all that sort of thing. Very exciting time ahead. Now, technology within forestry is huge, so much so that every year we have a 2-day conference seminar in Rotorua where folk from pretty much all over the globe that have got some whiz-bang toy or technology or product that we can use, they come to display, they come to talk about it, and it's through that we've actually seen a good number of products out of that now employed on a day-to-day basis. Now, another area that I haven't touched on, and the next slide is this one here, is the area of robotics. We all know that we read in the media that the tragedies of health and safety that surround forestry. We all hear issues from time to time about environmental issues around forestry, and more often than not that's due to poor practices. But what I'll show you here is a little video clip. We have time, Mr. Holland? Sure. Sure, very good. Of some technology that is now being employed. So if you know, in the forests in New Zealand, you see skidders. They now have them walking in Europe.
Prototype operations and several design patents. Timberjack has brought this technology one step further with a purpose-built prototype for heavy equipment applications. There are many benefits to walking technology. A walking machine has the ability to move in all directions and to turn on the spot, forwards and backwards, sideways and diagonally. This versatility allows it to move into very confined spaces. The walking machine adapts automatically to the terrain to keep the carrier level on uneven ground. Responding to sensor input, the machine distributes its weight evenly over the ground and finds a base of support for each of the 6 legs, resulting in incredible stability and optimal weight distribution. Depending on the irregularity of the ground, operators can adjust both the ground clearance of the machine and the height of each step. It has exact positioning and spot contact with the ground. It steps only where desired. And it has the ability to step over obstacles. Other types of wheel or track machines can boast some of these abilities, but cannot perform in the challenging terrain that the walking machine can.
Pretty amazing that, isn't it? I'm kind of a bit freaky or scary in a way, but this is the sort of area where, you know, manufacturers of those sorts of products are heading. Things that'll leave a very small footprint on the land. Right, now that's it from me. Any questions? Yes?
Just in terms of the increased capacity of the logging in our area by 1.4
Million cube.
what are the implications for jobs?
The job implications, very positive. Very positive. Currently, you know, if I speak of our company, we're looking to employ a couple more in the near future because of the growth that we're having in our harvesting program. And I would say that, I mean, harvesting is only one small component of that, but as you get more logs, we will require more crews. If we have more crews producing, we require more trucks. And so it's got that continuum all the way through. And, you know, all too often there is that, and quite right, just to think about the forestry, chopping the tree down, planting a tree, putting it on a truck. But in behind that, there's a huge service industry. So the need for the mechanics and the oil people and all of those service industries, gee, even Pat's Pantry down Gladstone Road, you know, they'll be taking on staff to produce more muffins and sandwiches and, you know, that sort of thing. So in terms of I wouldn't want to give you numbers, but very positive.
So in terms of jobs with ICT, like you
Mhm.
talked about, that would be a positive.
Most certainly. Within the forest companies, there would be the need for people with ICT ability to operate and drive those tools. Equally so, the companies that produce those tools will be looking for staff to come in and help develop those. Now, here in New Zealand, we've got a couple of companies, most notably Atlas is one out of Rotorua, which is a software company that develops a lot of the software component that goes into those tools. So I'd say yes. I mean, I acknowledge that a number of those key companies are based offshore, but in this day and age, with how people travel and base themselves everywhere around the globe, there should be no issue with that.
Any other questions or comments for Bill about maybe the forestry industry or jobs?
Fire away.
Because one of the big things that the organisers want to build to come along and let you guys know is that forestry these days, you know, they're training computers to count trees. And I know how hard that would be from a computer programming point of view, and I think that's pretty cool. And the next thing that you guys are going to go and see is over in the expo area, some robots. And some of that stuff that we saw with that walking robot, I think that's pretty cool too. So that's the kind of stuff that now is about forestry. And so a lot of us, when we kind of think for what our school age kids are going to get into, we don't kind of think of forestry as a high-tech thing and that computers are involved, because often we drive past those trees with the logging trucks go past and all that kind of stuff, and we don't see how much computers are involved in behind that stuff. So that's why we've invited Bill along. Question?
Let's say you get the working machine. Will that reduce the amount of jobs or increase the amount of jobs?
Increase the amount of jobs. Well, if you look at things now where we have the similar sort of machine with the ground-based skidder, it still needs one driver. That still needs one driver. Where you'll lose jobs is, you probably saw that big yellow piece on the end of the arm. That's a processing head, which that does the job of what we call a tree faller. So rather than sending a man or woman out with a chainsaw, you now have that machine to do that.
So that will reduce the amount of jobs.
But it would and it will on the sort of terrain where that machine can walk. If you look here on the east coast, I think there would be limitations to that machine on, you know, some of our very steep country. I would think that if you were to see that sort of machine out in the sand dune forestry or the very easy country of the central North Island, yes, there would be reduction in jobs of tree fallers, which is not a bad thing, because if you read the media, that is one of our most dangerous roles within the industry. And in terms of fatalities, tree fallers are right up there. So if we can save lives by applying technology that makes everybody safer, I think that's a good thing.
Sure.
Is the number of women in the forestry industry increasing?
I hope so. I mean, it's great to see all these women here, and it'd be marvellous if we had a few of this lot come out. It is, and across all facets, from working in the bush through to forest management and science. We hosted the final year University of Canterbury students for their field trip this year, and out of 18 students, 5 of them were female, which is an increase on the last few years. And these 5, of the 5 girls I spoke to, 4 of them already had jobs lined up to move to. So if that's positive, I'll take that.